Hello and welcome to ClatyChat. Today we speak to Bea Jaffray, before I say it incorrectly. And Bea will tell us about her journey as an artist, from working as a fine artist and then working with clay. Bea originally trained as a painter, but she completed a postgraduate ceramic diploma. And that's where the love for ceramics comes from. Penny will be here to assist us, and she will be sharing a slideshow, and then Bea will talk us through the pictures. Thank you, Penny. Over to you.
Thanks, Rika. Let me get the screen up. Okay, there you are. And you can go, you can just chat, you can talk.
Well, after I left university, we moved up to Pretoria from the town, and we lived in a townhouse. There wasn't any room for a studio, so I worked in the kitchen, and I made a piece which I named, I titled it Sacred Houses. It was white houses within a perspex box. That's it. And surrounding the perspex box were different colored blocks. The houses inside represented the whites. They were symbols of houses. And the blocks around the exterior of the perspex box, the invisible barrier, were black township little cubes to represent their houses. The reason I did this was I was very disturbed in 1985 by the fact that the blacks were burning their own kind by putting motor car tires around their necks and setting them alight. And it just made me feel so sad that I made this piece. It's not about apartheid. I misnamed it. Instead of the title being Safe as Houses, 1985, I just called it Safe as Houses, and people interpreted it as apartheid, but it was nothing to do with apartheid. It was how I was feeling in 1985 with the unrest in townships and we whites living safely behind this invisible barrier. And then I won the national prize, the National Ceramic Prize for this piece. And then subsequently, we moved to Johannesburg, and I had a studio. My husband had a studio built for me, and I started making plaques with pictures on them. And that's where I started making the tailor's dummies and the armor and painting the little squares. Had several of that from 1985 to fairly recently, because the galleries I chose to exhibit at certain galleries. They either the owners sold the gallery or they closed their galleries, and some of them went overseas. So I had one particular exhibition once a year in Rustenburg. Somebody there wanted my work, and she would have an exhibition at her house once a year. And now I'm working at present for an exhibition in France. Some of my techniques, the flat clocks I used to make, they were all inlaid with colored clay. But the little squares I make are all individually cut out. Holes are punched in the corners if I want to make a hanging piece. And then I put a pattern on them. I paint pattern on with a brush and underglaze color, black. Or I inlaid them with white slip. If they were colored clay, I would inlay them with white slip. I used a lot of glass initially, which I put in. I would cut out a piece, a square or a circle in the tile and put glass in it and then fire it so it adhered to the clay and made lovely colors. Otherwise I use glaze and paint a motif around it. Yeah, I paint on the glaze in some cases, or I paint on the clay itself. The little raised patterns I put on, I made my own little molds, and I just push the clay into the mold, take it out and apply it to my little clay square. I use a lot of gold luster, either on a glaze or on unglazed clay. What else can I? There were each little square takes me a very long time to make. It'll take me several days to make just one that's working from about 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because the process is so slow. Otherwise, I paint on a white glaze with a black underglaze. What other techniques do I use? I extrude clay where I need to. Yes, I can't live without my extruder. It's one of those, it looks like an injection needle, only it's made out of metal. So if I want a long, thin piece of clay, I extrude it. I'm sure potters will know what I'm talking about. Initially, when I went back to university in 1979, I made only pots. And come my final year, it was a 4-year course, I had to have an exhibition and I had to have a theme. And since I'm fundamentally a pattern maker, I love making patterns, I chose to put patterns on my pots, but they were influenced by African work, mostly from North Africa, because they applied lovely patterns to whatever they were making, whether it was masks or metal. The North African people made a lot of things in metal. That was my big influence. But a visiting lecturer from America, David Middlebrook, critiqued my work and said, I was not an African, nor was I primitive. And so the department took my kiln and my wheel away from me, and I wasn't allowed to make animal pots. I had to do handwork, and I wasn't sure what my theme was going to be. So I played around with a bit of clay, and when I took it up, I did this at home, and when I took it back, I shared a studio with Ralph Johnson, who's a very fine potter. And he said, oh, that looks a lot like armor. So I chose to do, David Middlebrook said I should go back to my own roots, which were fundamentally British. And so I chose to do medieval armor. And so all my work was based on, although it took different forms, it was based on the influence of the British army, of the suits of armor. And I wasn't allowed to put a single pattern on any of my work. So it was all hand built and no pattern. So when I was free from all that, I went ahead and made all my patterns. And put them on armor initially. I had a mold of my eldest son's chest, and I attached my little squares to that with wire. And from there, I made my own tailor's dummies by hand, coiling the clay, and attached the skirts of little squares to them. Now I make a top, not the tailor's dummy, nor the armor, but just a clay top. And I use a lot of oxide to make that metallic look. I use a mixture of copper oxide and manganese. And I apply my pattern first, my raised pattern. You can see where I've used my molds, and then I paint them with the oxide and fire. I get a lot of warping. Those are my two main things. Warping and I always say clay crumbs, because after I've applied those little patterns, I actually scratch away with a needle all the clay I don't want, and alter the little motifs on there, and I get a lot of clay crumbs, so I've got to brush them away. And so my biggest bane of my life is warping, and then clay crumbs. What else can I say? Those plaques I make that look like a piece of fabric. I just roll the clay out and cut it to shape, and then stick whatever patterns I want, whatever little squares I need on the clay. Yeah, that's very much, that example is very much like it. It's glass and clay. And this has underglaze colors and a clay color with a thin layer of a glaze. It's got some brownish look at that. I use a lot of, I do use what's called 3D color to impress, in which to impress my little molds or whatever I use to impress the clay. I don't know. Those are my methods.
Anything you want to ask, Rika?
Yes, plenty. I just love your work, Bea. It's just so inspirational. My first question, are your piles all the same size?
Your molds, Mum.
My molds, that's my secret.
No, I mean the size.
Are they the same size? Are they the same size?
No, they vary. They really vary, and I alter them when they come out of my mold. I might press holes into them or sort them or make them smaller.
How big would such a piece be, Bea?
How big would that piece be? That piece is actually a very unique piece. I don't think there's another one like it. It's
I try to make them all unique.
Yeah, I know, but the size of this one, if you're that's a miniature one.
I think those little squares with 3 centimeters when I cut out the clay, they shrink a bit in the firing. So
Okay.
I think they were about 3 or 3.5 centimeters. They are absolutely painful to make. But my daughter, I make
Rika, will this come up on the screen?
Yes, I can see it quite clearly. So that's the size.
That's the size, and these little squares are much smaller than the normal squares.
My normal squares are 4.5 centimeters when I cut them out.
It's incredible. It's just incredible.
I make them 4.5 with 3.5 because they shrink 0.5 centimeter.
And
so
then
I'm working with equal numbers. I'm not a great one when it comes to sums and maths. I have a terrible time with measurement. But I keep on doing.
Do you plan a panel in a certain color range and then make
I make a whole variety of colors, unless I'm making a white one or an off-white one, then I make that color, but of orange, a whole batch of red, a whole batch of green. And then I select how I'm going to lay them out, which takes a long time.
I can imagine.
Because I want to vary the pattern so they're not two round ones next to each other. Something similar. And the colors too. I've got to see that I've got some blue ones up there and some blue ones down here. So it takes quite a long time to lay them out.
Can you go back to that picture? That's a beautiful painting.
Yes, I included just a few of my mom's paintings because she's always painting.
I'm not very good at it, so I love it.
It's beautiful.
So just a couple of
You can see I just am obsessed with the little checks and squares.
Just love it. Beautiful.
I think you should mention that my mom's done some amazing black and white drawings, which are a bit like that, and they used wonderful effect in some apartments.
Looks exquisite.
She's an all-rounder.
And I'm master of none.
Come on.
No, your work is absolutely exquisite. Such an inspiration.
Thank you.
And more recently, my mom's done some wonderful address plaques in a little village in France, where I'm very fortunate enough to own that house that you can see.
Yes, this corner house.
The corner house. And my mom's started making, well, she started with that. That's the address of my house. And we discovered that so many people photographed it that it became quite a feature. And people around the village started asking if they could have a plaque as well. So my mom's got quite a few of these beautiful plaques lining the streets in the village, and they, as I say, have become quite a feature, to the point that a newly opened gallery has actually gone around and photographed some of the plaques and put them together in a poster. So yeah, that's also some of the wonderful work my mom's done.
It is amazing. It's absolutely so inspiring. And the exhibition you're having in France, when will that be?
It's going to be at this little gallery, and it was due to happen last June, but unfortunately COVID put a stop to all of that, and unfortunately we're still sitting in that situation where we're not sure exactly when we can get the work over. I think we'll have about 100 kilograms or more of work to take. And the moment we can, we'll be there, and yeah, the meeting. So plan for as soon as we can.
That is just so wonderful. So you've completed all the work for the exhibition.
Mom, you finished all the work for the exhibition.
Well, I'll just keep working, because what else am I going to do? I've got a load to go. Pen's taken him over, but there's a limit to the weight she can take. Because she goes to France, they are allowing her an extra 45 kgs. So she'll take 45 kgs of mine at a time. But of course, my stuff weighs an awful lot. So we'll have to see.
I can imagine. Do you ever make work according to what's trendy in terms of color? Or does that not influence you?
Mom, do you ever make work according to what's trendy in terms of color?
Oh yes, because the gallery I had in Cape Town wanted blue. Everybody wanted blue in their houses, and I made umpteen dozens pieces in blue. But now, for this exhibition in France, I'm making a variety of colors because I'm not sure whether they're also going to want green or blue because it goes with their decor. So, as I say, they're getting a variety of colors.
It's amazing. You fire your tiles to 1260, so it's stoneware tiles. Am I correct?
It's, you fire to 1260.
Oh yes,
stoneware.
I fire to 1260. Although I use a low firing porcelain, which should be fired at cone 5, but I'll fire to 1260. Yes.
And I might just say, Rika, it's quite a performance to do the firing because my mom has her studio in an apartment on the 3rd floor, and the kiln is in the basement. So
Oh,
it's you can imagine her carrying these trays of pieces down all these flights of stairs, packing the kiln,
Yes.
and then lugging it all up again.
Yes. And while I'm firing the kiln, I've got to keep going down to check it. So it's quite a lot of exercise going up and down 60 steps. So 8 times 60. Anyway, and of course with these constant, what they call load shedding, I'm never sure whether I can fire the kiln or not.
yes.
The kiln's very old and I'm very old, so it takes a long time. It should fire as the kiln gets older. It takes over 12 hours to fire it. But I don't think it's worth putting more new elements in my kiln because I don't know how long I'll go on doing this.
Well, as long
Going up and down.
She'll be going up and down the stairs in that kiln for a long time.
Oh, yes, please.
And I usually get up at about 4 in the morning to go and switch it on. And then I've got to check it constantly. Anyway, that's part of the joy, I suppose.
So you say you work with a porcelain body.
So Rika, what was that?
So you're working
You
with,
asked about the porcelain.
so the clay body is porcelain.
The clay body is porcelain.
It is porcelain, but it's not a very porcelain. You usually fire at a very high temperature, but this fires at a much lower temperature. So
Okay.
1260 is not all that high for porcelain, I suppose. I don't know. I've never used a porcelain for pots or anything. I've only used it for flat things like I make.
Yes.
And that one,
I was curious to ask you, you said that you worked with Ralph Johnson and he was saying that the wood looked like armor. Do you feel that caused a whole change in direction for you for your work?
When Ralph mentioned that your work looked like armor, was that a change in direction for you?
Oh, definitely, because I was making pots. Now I was, and I had to do something from my own background and the fact that I wasn't primitive or black. So it was a complete change for me. But I enjoyed it, and yes, except the part where I wasn't allowed to put any patterns on my work. Yes, but it was lovely because I like hand building instead of, I don't throw anything anymore. So it's all done by hand and I enjoy it.
A piece like the one on the screen, how long would it take you to assemble it? Because, you know, 4 holes to put it all together.
You know, to put it together, depending on how many squares they are, if they are, say, 11 by 22, it could take me a couple of days to put it together. But a small piece, like I've been making, I can put it together with wire in a day, if it's only, what, eight squares by, no, but I'd be 5 squares by 10. Yes, that doesn't take me long. But then, of course, it's got a top, not a tailor's dummy or armor. It's just got a flat top, which I make secretly.
I'm just going to get a picture of that, like that one.
Oh,
The top would take me about a week to make. Maybe a little longer. Yeah, about a week, depending on its size, of course.
I think you've wonderfully achieved that metal look on those pieces, because everybody thinks it's metal, you know, and you've just perfected it. It is just so exquisite, but it's all done with oxides.
Yeah, I enjoy it so much. I really do. The big part, hard part about it is, what am I going to put on it? What sort of pattern am I going to put on it? All that, once I've got it all assembled, ready to stick on to the back, then that's fine. It's just deciding what's going to go in the corner, what's going to go in the middle.
Do you still use glass?
Pardon?
You still use glass, Mum?
No, I've stopped using glass because I have to have a separate firing for the glass. It fires at a much lower temperature. And, you know, firing the kiln when you live 3 stories up and you've got to go down to the basement, it's just a big slip. So I've stopped using glass. I use glaze instead.
Okay. And then luster as well will be a third firing, the gold luster.
The gold luster, Mom.
Oh,
it's another firing.
That is a pleasure to do, because it doesn't take long to put the gold luster on, and it's a 3-hour firing. 4 at the most, but I found 3 hours quite sufficient for it to reach its right temperature.
Wonderful. Is there, what inspires you today for making new designs?
What inspires you today to make new designs?
I've got to think about it, because I like every square to be different, although there are some which I repeat. So the repetitive ones are not difficult. Those tiles you see now are all individually made, and I've got to decide on what I'm going to paint around those included.
I see that you love red.
To make them different.
What was that, Rika? I didn't catch that.
I see that you love the red, the nice deep red.
The reds. The reds,
reds.
Mom. You like red.
Yes, I've made a lot of red recently. It's not my favorite color by any means. It's just one of those easy things to do. It's an underglaze color.
Maybe it's because it's my favorite color that I pick it up.
Yeah, I think it's I'm to blame in a way. I like the red, so I always try and get as much red as I can.
Penny, if you want to stop sharing your screen, then I can share a couple of photos that I also have.
Oh, yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Let me just get that. I'm just going to flip through them because we've seen that one.
Yes.
Just want to see how I must move it. Yes. There's another one with a different frame on top.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to get my mouse in the right place to, let's just go back. There's one with your neutral and your metal colors. Too beautiful.
Yeah, and that dark color is a glaze. It's colored glaze.
Okay, so it's glaze on that one.
Yes, it's a browny color actually.
Absolutely gorgeous.
It's meant to come out green, but it came out brown.
There we can see some lovely gold.
The gold, yes. I must apologize for the quality of the photos. They're my photos and I'm hopeless as you can see. So I'm sorry they're such poor quality.
Do you take photos of all your blocks or of all the completed works for your record purposes?
Do you take photos, Mom, of all your
I
work?
used to, but I don't anymore. Yeah, I can't be bothered. So I've made a lot of things that haven't been photographed.
Which is a shame.
It is.
They're all the same.
No, they're not.
Do you only use gold or do you use other lusters on your work as well, Bea?
Only gold luster or other colors, other lusters?
And no, I used to have a red luster, but I don't anymore. I just have gold. And I have made a piece, a grey piece. So I use platinum luster.
Okay.
But that was an order from someone. They wanted a grey piece. I've used platinum luster, which is a greyish colour. Oh, I'd forgotten I made that.
Lovely. I love it that it's not, you know, it's not the formal square.
No, it's not a formal square, Mum. Those just how you've managed to get those to all fit like a puzzle almost.
Oh yes, the way I cut the clay. More like a puzzle.
Were these the inlaid clay pieces you were talking about?
Inlaid, Mum?
Inlaid.
Are they inlaid?
No, those colours were painted on top.
I'm just going through. Are these some of your very first pieces then?
Then I cut, yeah, the glass was inlaid. I cut a little shape into the clay and then fill it with glass or glaze. So it doesn't spread. It stays within the area that I've cut out.
Beautiful. There's a huge piece. I can just imagine the size of that one.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, it's 1, 2, 3. I don't know how many it's got. 15 across. Yeah, I used to make very big ones. And the painful part about that one was painting the little squares with black and white around the border.
Oh,
Yes,
Mm.
those. Because I had to paint each little square on the square. And the checks, the check part, very time consuming.
what would a piece like that weigh in total? What would the weight be?
Mom, the
Oh.
weight of that would be heavy, hey?
Very
Really?
heavy, but I don't know. I'm not good at estimating
Mm.
weights. But where did you get that picture from?
I don't know. Where did that one come from?
I think no, somebody must have posted it on Facebook. I
I
pulled it.
think so.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, I made that a long time ago, about 20 years ago.
Mm. I think, yeah, a piece like that would be difficult for me to pick up.
Yes.
Yeah, that sort of heavy, I suppose. I'm also useless at estimating, but it would be an effort, a real effort to pick that up.
Yes, I can imagine. But then the way that you put the tiles together is also very important, because when you move it around, that they don't come loose. So I assume you.
Oh, you're right. Yes. I used to use a plumber's wire for those, but now I use a dental wire. Forgotten the name.
So it's a
It's an
wire.
imported wire.
So it's a wire.
Ligature wire. A ligature wire.
Yeah, ligature wire. Sorry, what was that, Rika?
So it's a wire that cannot break because of the movement. You would need to.
Yes, I couldn't use a wire that rusted. So it's got to be, well, the plumber's wire, as far as I know, didn't rust. And the ligature wire I use now shouldn't rust.
Well, you've perfected it.
Yes, they're very expensive to make.
I can
with the ligature wire and
gold luster.
And the gold luster.
And the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can just imagine. Bea, your work is so inspiring, and it was so wonderful to hear your journey. And what would you like to say to yourself, a younger self, if you now think back? Would you do anything different?
Mom, what would you say to yourself when you were a lot younger? What would you tell yourself now?
What an idiot you are.
Oh, come on.
Rita, don't have a high regard for anything I make or do. There's always something wrong with it.
Yeah, she's a real pain. She's the most critical critic of her work. It's yeah, painful.
So, but thank you very much for your compliments and your lovely interview. I've enjoyed it.
It's such an honor, because I feel that there's so much that you can give and share, and it was wonderful to hear it. And Penny, thank you for facilitating this. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for putting up with my deafness.
I think Penny coped with it very well, thank you.